Hey everybody, welcome to Snow Talk. I'm meteorologist Brian Good here. We've got a lot to discuss with this update, so we'll get right to the message board right off the bat here. The one system of interest is no longer the one for next week. I wanted to wait another set of models to really decide whether or not that still needs to be on the board, and after looking at all the data from the past 4 runs since yesterday, I don't see enough to keep it on the board for next week. But another one has been added, because again, my range is 14 days is what I try to limit myself to, and there is a system of interest that we do need to talk about that could be multiple systems the way it's looking now. So the November period, especially the second half of the month, is looking very, very active. So we'll get into the details on that in a second. First off, let's talk about the change in our weather that is happening right now. We picked up over an inch of rain last night. We did have some wind damage. I'm looking now of some of the wind damage reports across Edmonson County. It's close to Bowling Green, and then not far from Lexington. There's several reports of some trees that have been snapped, and mainly Bradford repairs, and of course there's been some reports of some power outages as well. So there was some wind damage in southern Kentucky, but mainly just a heavy rain producer for a lot of us. 69 right now in town. You compare these numbers to this time yesterday. Obviously it's cooler. The front's now through, and in fact it passed through Louisville International in the past 10 minutes. And you see temperatures behind the front really drop off. We won't really feel that effect until for tomorrow. The front itself, again, has just passed Louisville, so it's now draped right across central areas of Kentucky. And in fact, if you look carefully, you can actually see where the front is. A little bit of rain. We'll look at that in a second. But notice the flow, because the front is slowing down. And because the front is slowing down, the flow here out of the southwest continues right along the front, and that's keeping the cloud deck pretty extensive on the northern side. Even though the winds have shifted and drier air is funneling in, the cloud deck, especially the higher level clouds, are not clearing out rapidly. So expect the clouds to hold tough tonight and to hold tough tomorrow, especially for our southern counties. Everybody will finally get a chance to clear out as we head into the second half of the weekend. We'll get into that in just a second. Right now, the reporting station's got cloudy a lot of locations here right across where the front is. And again, as I mentioned, you can see right along where that boundary is, that's where a few downpours. We had a downpour at the station, in fact, right across J-Town through about Eminence, Newcastle. You guys is where the front is located. I mean, it does stretch all the way down, but the only rain along the front has been right around Henry County at the moment, and a little bit of Oldham County. After that, you can see here our banner at the bar. This updates continuously as the data comes in, and it's now northwest wind at 12 miles per hour. So the winds have shifted. The front has now cleared. So we've got plans for tonight. It's downhill from here on. Temperatures will continue to drop. You'll need a jacket if you're in the area high school football games. Yes, we're showing 50s, but it will be a little breezy, so dress for upper 40s, and you should be all right. So there's Futurecast. It shows that cloud deck again as we into Saturday, kind of holding tough. But by Saturday night and early Sunday, we finally get it out of here. Then we've got to deal with our next system that's questionable here. It's not going to bother us on Sunday now. I think Sunday's going to be a beautiful blue sky day. We'll be cooler. But then as we into Monday afternoon, Monday night, into Tuesday, we do have this wave that is going to work its way in across the south. Now the Euro, this is not the Euro, this is NAM, by the way. The Euro is still aggressive. I'm bringing some showers into Kentucky. Then NAM and GFS and other models kind of keep it to our south. It does increase the cloud cover on all of them, though. So we are going to increase the clouds and keep a small chance for a wave of showers, and it may likely happen when you're sleeping Monday night and early Tuesday. So it doesn't look to be a big deal, but it may add a little bit to our rain totals, especially for those of you in Kentucky versus Indiana. Then after it leaves, we get into the system that was on the board for next week. Rotates around, becomes a pretty strong low. I mean, this is a decent low. This is the GFS model, and it shows the trailing cold front moving through. So this is a pretty wrapped up system. Here's the cold air on the northern side of it. But once again, just like we went through this morning, it's nearly identical in every single model, bringing it in during the night and very early in the morning hours. So, when we look at the wind fields, just like this past system, pretty darn impressive across wave country. But when we look at the instability, once again, it is limited because of the timing on this. This looks to be a late Wednesday night, early Thursday morning rush hour event for next week. So as long as that timing holds, this is going to be a very similar issue. Isolated wind, high winds possible, but mainly just a burst of heavy rain for this next system for next week. Now, if the time you were to slow down and this were to arrive more into Thursday afternoon, then we would have to talk about the instability being higher, and then we got to look at the severe weather parameters a little more closely. So it's still early in the game. It's more a week out. But this is an early glance at how the system is looking. The reason why I took it off the board for anything wintry, though, is because the main cool shot behind the system is delayed a bit. It actually comes down with a little void that dips down over the weekend. So it's kind of disjointed from the system itself. So this main low, the surface low, is not going to be impressive. The upper low attached to it really kind of is delayed and kind of moves through on Saturday. So about 24 hours or so after the rain next week, we get the cool air. So you'll notice on your app, if you've checked it out, you will see temperatures on Saturday a little colder, or cooler I should say, than they will be on Friday, because the cool air is going to be delayed and maybe cloudy in a few locations, especially in Indiana. So I did increase the clouds just a smidge, but no precipitation expected. That's the way it's looking right now. After we get past that, we get into the pattern that I think is going to shape up for the rest of November. Let me explain what I mean by that. So far, we've had a very active northern piece of the jet here. I mean, there's been some very impressive low pressures here in the Aleutian Islands all the way through Alaska. The subtropical jet has been hanging around. It's been supplying some decent lows that have been able to move out of the Four Corners area, and they at times are able to connect to the northern branch, but when they do, they get pulled up to the north and northeast, mainly because we got some ridging going on, and there's actually a tropical system right now that's feeding on that ridge. It's not going to be a factor for the United States, but it tells us the ridge is certainly there when we see a tropical system like that underneath it. So that's the reason why these systems are getting pulled to the north, and they don't have a chance to go pull to the due east. And because they go north, you don't get that full discharge of Arctic air into the eastern half of the country. But what I think is going to happen, starting around the 15th or so, we're going to see several of these systems roll on out. We're going to see the subtropical jet remain active, but we're going to begin to lose signs here of the southeastern ridge. And this is going to allow for bigger areas of low pressure that are going to develop a little further to the south that will likely track a little more to the east. Instead of north of Louisville, they may go a little more east of Louisville. Now, you're going to see some that are going to take it right away into a rain to snow scenario around the 15th or 16th. I don't think that's the one to worry about. It may bring us snowflakes somewhere in the Ohio Valley. I wouldn't rule that out. But I think it's going to be a step-down process. I think the models are too fast on this. I think it's going to be a couple of systems. So I think it's going to be closer to the 19th and 20th that we may have enough cold air at play with a subtropical jet to get things a little more interesting. And that may even hold off even longer than that. It could even get all the way into Thanksgiving. Again, I still have a feeling about Thanksgiving week being the week that we may see something wintry in our area. But it's going to be a process of getting these systems moving through. The other factor you keep in mind is when you have one strong low pressure moving through, the space between the next one is just as important. If they're too far spaced out and it's way back here, you have a chance to build a ridge again and you warm up. If they're close together, though, the warm up is cut off. It doesn't have enough time. So this second low then gets to feed on the cold air of the low in front of it, and then you get into a wintry scenario. And that's what happened on the 17th of November last year. It was a strong Arctic high, don't get me wrong, but that was kind of the same scenario. We had two low pressures pretty close together, and it was that second one that really gave us an accumulating snow. So the spacing is as key on that, and timing of the energy coming out. I mean, there's a lot of questions still. So again, this is still a very low confidence forecast. But the indices, at least, again, indices drive the pattern, are at least leaning in this direction now. We're seeing signs of the Arctic oscillation beginning to head negative. NALs beginning negative, showing more chance for blocking, and the PNA trying to trend positive, trying to change the jet stream pattern. The GFS is similar. It's a little behind here on the PNA, but it is similar in the idea of a pattern change starting to show up for the second half of November. Here's that system for the 15th. Again, this is the Canadian model brought to you by our friends over at Weatherbell Analytics. And you see it moving through. And again, it may give some backlash snows in this area, but this is the one that's going to be key. How quickly can this catch up to that one? Here is the Euro model. Much slower, not surprising. It has a tendency to get stuck on energy in the Rockies. It gets stuck in that area, doesn't know what to do with it. But strong energy still across the northern polar jet here. So this will be interesting to see, but this is one I think is going to be one that'll move through. It's going to be active for us, but it's going to be how this one behind it interacts. And then here is the GFS, very similar to the Canadian model, with it moving through 15th and 16th with rain and thunderstorms, maybe some backlash, wintry. But we've got to watch and see what this bad boy does behind it and how quickly it can catch up to its friend in front of it. Because this is the GFS going to the 20th of November, pretty far out, you see the end result when they do catch up. You get a large area of high pressure in the center part of the country, and you get a much more wintry look in the eastern part of the country. But the GFS, this may not be exactly right, and I doubt it is. It's too far out. But the GFS is really good about sniffing out these setups, but it's really bad on the details. All right, guys, that's how it's looking for now. For you snow lovers, be patient. Changes are coming. Stay with us, and we'll keep an eye on it.